Hey everyone, and welcome back to another breaking news update. My name is Jimmy Boyd, and you were watching Boyd News. I want to thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm back with another update coming out for the war between Russia and Ukraine, and I've got a huge lineup of news to brief you all on today. Today's date is September 2nd, 2025, and it's Tuesday. Welcome back to the channel, everyone, and I hope you're all having a wonderful day today. We've got lots of big news to get into with this war update, and we're going to start out with a huge story out of Ukraine's Donetsk Oblast, as today we have reports that Ukrainian forces have been able to push the Russians back in multiple areas, particularly around the Bakravs direction. So we're going to talk about this report here on your screen. Ukraine has advanced in the Bakravs direction, recapturing Udokny. The defense forces of Ukraine have liberated the settlement of Udokny in the Donetsk region, driving out Russian troops and raising the Ukrainian flag over the community. So this is very big news, guys. We haven't talked about the Bakrov's direction very much recently, but we know there's lots of heavy fighting ongoing right there. The Russian forces have deployed at least 100,000 troops in that area. That's going to be in southeastern Ukraine in the Donetsk Oblast. So this is kind of a map to show you guys where this took place at. So on the left side of your screen, you got that red box with that little house symbol. That is Udokny, and that's where the Ukrainian forces have been able to push into that settlement and retake it and have raised the Ukrainian flag. There's a little photo right there on your screen as well. And also, apparently yesterday, there was another big report that there was another settlement that has been taken over in that area as well by Ukraine, regained at least by Ukrainian forces. That's going to be northeast of Murnerad, which is going to be that third red box on the right side of your screen with that city that is kind of has a red box around it. So we're going to talk about that as well, as there's another settlement that was taken over by Ukraine yesterday. And that's huge news because, Russian forces are heavily manned in this area. And at the same time, Ukraine is still able to make more gains over here and push the Russians back. This is an area that Ukraine has been fighting for well over a year now, and they are making more progress in that area and also preventing encirclement of the city of Pokrovsk. So we'll talk more about that here in just a moment. We also have reports today of explosions in the city of Taganrog overnight in Rostov Oblast. Ukrainian drones were attacking that city. I'm not really sure exactly what they were going after, but we do have reports of explosions and video footage today. Also, Ukrainian airstrikes reported near the airport in Mariupol in the Donetsk Oblast earlier today. We do have a picture coming out showing a massive explosion near the airport over there. So Ukraine was carrying out some sort of strike over there. And also, Russian President Vladimir Putin made more statements today at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, also known as the SCO. And this is in China, so we've got some statements I want to share with you guys coming out from there today as well. So much news to cover. Let's just go ahead and dive right into this. We're going to hop it over here to X with Drone Bomber. It says approximate flight routes of our UAVs. Red arrow indicates directions of strike UAVs. Blue arrow indicates directions of jet-powered UAVs. All route information is based on Russian sources. So there was a massive drone attack ongoing inside of Russia last night, and I was expecting to hear something being hit, either an oil refinery or maybe some sort of defense plant, but unfortunately not too many reports of any explosions or anything being hit inside of Russia overnight. Again, we do know in Rostov-on-Don there was some explosions down here, or the Rostov Oblast, mainly near the city of Taganrog, which is going to be just a little bit northwest of Rostov-on-Don. In this area, you can see a lot of drones were passing through here, so it's possible that's what those drones were going after, but we cannot confirm exactly what Ukraine was trying to strike over there. We do know that in the city of Taganrog, there is like an aircraft repair plant that they use, the Russians use for their military. And also there's an air base over there that is frequently used to launch drone attacks onto Ukraine. So that could have been the possibility of what Ukraine was going after, but we weren't able to confirm that as of yet. You can see some drones even heading down here to Crimea overnight. So there was a lot of explosions inside of Russia, just nothing concrete in terms of what was being hit coming out overnight. So let's go ahead and move on to some other information. I pulled up an article here that talks about the Bakravs direction with this village that has been retaken by Ukraine. So we're going to briefly go over this real quick. This is from the Kyiv Independent today, and it says Ukraine liberates another village near Pokrovsk, military says. And this coming out today, September 2nd, 2025. You can see the date here. Here's a picture of that screenshot from a video actually that came out. Shows two Ukrainian soldiers placing a flag here in the village of Udokny as they took it over today. I'll show you guys the video footage coming out from Ukraine's military here in just a moment. And it says right here, Ukrainian forces cleared out Russian troops from the Donetsk Oblast village of Udakne and raised the Ukrainian flag in the settlement. The General Staff of Ukraine's armed forces reported on September 2nd. Udakne lies around 10 kilometers or 6 miles west of Bakravs, a strategic town that has become one of the fiercest frontline areas in Ukraine's east. The announcement comes only a day after Ukrainian military reported the liberation of the nearby village of Novo-Ekonomichny. If I'm saying that right, I might be butchering that name. Kind of a hard name to pronounce, but this is the other village that Ukraine was able to recapture here recently over the last 24 hours. It also says soldiers of Ukraine's 425th Scotland Regiment destroyed all Russian positions in the city, the General Staff said, sharing a video of a pair of Ukrainian soldiers raising the flag on top of a damaged building. For 2 weeks, assault units gradually cleared the house after house and raised the Ukrainian flag over the village, a military spokesperson said in the video. So apparently it took about 2 weeks to take over this village again. And it says the Ukrainian monitoring group Deep State showed that Russian forces were still holding the southern part of Udakne as part of September 1st, with the northern part marked as a contested gray area. So here's the map to kind of show you guys. This is from Deep State Maps. I've shown you guys this map before, and we'll go over it again today, indicating here that in the village of Udakne, about half of it is under control by Ukraine, but based on the information we have today, Ukraine has completely captured this. So sometimes it does take a few days, maybe up to a week, for Deep State Maps to update that. We'll see if they happen to do that in the future. We're going to go ahead and hop back and over to X now. I've got more information to share with you. This is from Null Reports. General Staff confirms Ukrainian forces have cleared the village of Udakne in Donetsk region and raised the flag. This marks progress southwest of Pokrovsk. So this is the video footage coming out today from the 425th Regiment of Ukrainian military, and they are confirming today they have retaken the village of Udakne. So about 40 seconds long. I do apologize. It is going to be in Ukrainian. There's no English subtitles or anything, but I'll go ahead and play the sound anyway. Let these men talk and explain the situation, but there is good, graphical information you're going to see here on the screen and video footage that clearly shows them retaking this town. Take a look.
Полк «Скеля» звільнив селище Удачне на Донеччині. В прямому контакті і за підтримки засобів ураження було знищено всі опорні пункти ворога. На цих кадрах бійці знищують ворожу позицію пострілом з гранатомета. Протягом 2 тижнів штурмові групи поетапно зачистили будинок за будинком та підняли над селищем український прапор.
Слава Україні, хлопці! Молодці, молодці! Зробили!
Поселок Удачне.
Поселок Удачне! Поселок Удачне!
Чуть ниже, чуть меньше.
Парни, молодцы, молодцы! Давайте быстрее, быстрее!
Справу виконано. Далі буде більше. Слава Україні!
Полк «Скеля» звільнив селище.
Okay, so we can see with this video, Ukrainian forces carrying out numerous attacks inside the village of Udakne and was able to replace that flag, indicating they have retaken this town. So that's very good news to hear. And ultimately, what's great to hear about this is the fact that this is going to stop the Russian forces from trying to encircle the city of Bakravs. So very good news to hear coming out from Ukraine today, with Ukrainian forces retaking this village of Udakne. So now we're going to hop on over to a map and let me show you guys exactly where all this fighting is taking place at. So we've got Ukraine right here. Here's Russian territory. There's Moscow up there. We're going to go into the Donetsk Oblast here in southeastern Ukraine. And we'll zoom into the Bakravs direction, okay? So Udakne is going to be right here just to the west of Pokrovsk. And you can see it's kind of like the northernmost tip of this offensive, where if the Russians were to continue pressing forward, they might be able to cut off this major highway that leads into Bakravs. So this is why Ukraine is counterattacking in this area. And Udakne is allegedly the village where they have retaken today. And we heard from yesterday, apparently there's a new village here also, Novo-Ekonomichny, if I'm saying that correctly. Still hard to kind of pronounce that, but that's to the east or northeast of Murderad, which is another major city here next to Bakravsk. And Ukraine has allegedly regained this settlement over here as well. So very good news. So far, they're doing a very good job of holding back the Russian forces. We can see this wedge that was formed about 2 weeks ago when Russian forces made a breakthrough. Ukraine has still, for the most part, encircled these troops up here on the northern side of this offensive and starting to block and prevent a lot of advancement from Russian troops over here. So far, over the last like 4 or 5 days, we haven't seen many updates in this area. But very good news to hear for the Bakravs direction. They have stopped this Russian push and starting to push the Russians back. And considering the fact that the Russians have so many troops over there, that's very impressive from Ukraine. So now from Institute for the Study of War, the Russian military command reportedly redeployed relatively elite naval infantry and airborne VDV forces to Donetsk Oblast from northern Sumy Oblast and Kherson direction. The reported redeployment suggests that the Russian fall 2025 offensive will focus on efforts to seize the remainder of Donetsk Oblast, particularly in the Dobropilya, Pokrovsk, and Kostiantynivka areas. So you can see the date here was September 1st, 2025. This was a story that broke yesterday. I wasn't able to grab this for you guys. It came out yesterday evening. But yeah, Institute for the Study of War is reporting that in these areas along the front line, especially in the Donetsk Oblast right here, the Russians are preparing new offensives to press forward again. So we'll see how successful they're able to be. We've heard numerous times throughout this year that the Russians were going to be launching new offensives, and for the most part, the Russians aren't really making many gains really anywhere inside of Ukraine. There has been some, small gains on the eastern side in the Donetsk region, like what we saw with that major breakthrough a couple weeks ago, but for the most part, no major gains being reported from the Russian side. So now from UA Voyager, right now, the peaceful neighborhoods of Murderad are burning from Russian bombs and drones, and the world just doesn't see it. But we must scream and show everyone what Russian terrorists are doing. Don't scroll past. Share this so the world must finally act. Yeah, I wanted to pull this up and show this to you guys. This is in the city of Murderad, okay? We just talked about this, right next to Bakravs, a major city connected to Bakravs by literally a bridge. And the Russians are heavily shelling it and destroying it. Lots of aerial bomb attacks reported in this area consistently. Imagine fighting over here on the front line in this city. I can't imagine it with all these heavy attacks here. So look at the entire city on fire here from Russian attacks recently. This was a new video just coming out today that UA Voyager shared. So very crazy. This is how intense things are over here right now. So very good to hear that Ukraine is pushing the Russians back, on top of being bombarded like that in cities like Murderad. Now from Anna Kamza, music to my ears, as she says, Rostov. So these were videos coming out overnight in the Rostov region showing massive explosions over here. Lots of drones were attacking the area. Air defense missiles were missing some of these drones, crashing into buildings over here. I want to show you this real quick. Okay, so we can hear a huge explosion at the beginning of this video. I'm not sure exactly what it was that blew up. That could have been air defense missiles, maybe intercepting drones or something like that. But we can see there's a building on fire over here. There was lots of reports of buildings catching on fire due to Russian air defense missiles that were missing their targets, trying to shoot down drones and slamming into buildings. You can see right there, clearly there's a building on fire. You can see also there's a lot of car alarms going off in that video as well from this massive explosion. Then also from Max 25, work of Rostov air defense. And take a look at this. This is a picture coming out also showing an air defense missile allegedly that slammed into a building, a high-rise residential building inside of the Rostov region overnight as it was trying to intercept incoming Ukrainian drones. Now from Max 25, Mariupol strikes reported in the airport area. This is a picture coming out from the Donetsk Oblast today, actually, in the city of Mariupol down in southern Ukraine, right on the border down there of the Sea of Azov. We had a major strike here that was carried out. I'm not sure if it was HIMARS or what it was, but Ukraine carrying out a massive airstrike over here, very close to the airport in Mariupol. So if we get more information on that, I'll let you guys know what Ukraine was targeting, but we can see a huge explosion right there. Now, Kate from Kharkiv, super long lines at gas stations in occupied Luhansk, Ukrainian sanctions work. This is a new video coming out showing another huge line at a separate gas station in the Luhansk region. This is an occupied territory on the eastern side of Ukraine where the Russians are currently controlling. And I want to show you guys this. These fuel shortages are still ongoing right now. Huge line of cars waiting to get gas. Take a look at this.
Ну, эпопея с бензином также, смотрю, продолжается. Очередяхи, конечно, такие веселые. Да уж. Ого! Почти что до самой Буденного.
Okay, so kind of a longer video. We'll go ahead and pause it right there. But I mean, look at this line just going on and on and on. There's probably more than 100 vehicles just right here in line. I mean, imagine getting in this line waiting for what, maybe 2, 3, 4 hours just to fill up your tank of gas. This is crazy what is happening inside of Russia. We are continuing to see more fuel shortages getting worse and worse and spreading to different areas. We talked about Luhansk yesterday. I showed you guys a different video, but this line here looks longer than the one we saw yesterday. So it looks like multiple gas stations in the Luhansk direction or Luhansk region of Ukraine seeing lots of major fuel shortages. Now, military news UA, we're going to talk about some of these statements coming out from Vladimir Putin today, speaking at the SCO summit in inside of China. It says Moscow tolerated and did not respond to Ukrainian attacks on energy infrastructure for a long time, then began to respond seriously, says Putin. More statements, he said, was it is possible to find a consensus on ensuring Ukraine's security guarantees. Ukraine must decide for itself how to ensure its security. So interesting that Putin says that Ukraine needs to decide itself how to ensure its security. Didn't they already do that? They've come out numerous times. You know, we've been reporting from Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, what Ukraine requires for security guarantees. They want written agreements from NATO to back them. They want continued support. They don't want any reduction to their military. These are all things that Russia does not want Ukraine to have, of course. But interesting too, he stated here that Moscow tolerated and did not respond to Ukrainian attacks on energy infrastructure for a long time, and then began to respond seriously. So kind of stating that, we let Ukraine attack our oil depots and our oil refineries for a long time, and we didn't really respond. Now we're responding seriously, and we have been seeing that inside of Ukraine. We've seen a lot of gas and oil infrastructure inside of Ukraine being struck and destroyed recently. I'm sure a lot of that is due to responses from Ukraine hitting all these oil refineries recently, and Russia shutting down approximately 20 to 25% of oil refining capacity inside the Russian Federation. So let me know how you feel on that statement. Do you agree with Vladimir Putin today talking about how, they did not respond for a long time to Ukrainian attacks on energy, and now they began to respond seriously? Now, military news UA, we are reacting harshly to attacks on the pipeline, according to Robert Fico. This is the Prime Minister out of Slovakia. I will have a meeting with Zelensky on Friday, and I will seriously raise the issue because it is unacceptable for such attacks to be carried out. This is Robert Fico right here, the Slovakian Prime Minister. He's also attending that summit today in Shanghai, and he was meeting with Vladimir Putin. You can see here in the video footage. And this is what he was telling Vladimir Putin, that apparently they were reacting harshly to Ukraine's attacks on the Druzhba oil pipeline. We've been talking about that. I do have an update on the Uneka oil pumping station that was hit numerous times over the past couple weeks. We heard that the Druzhba oil pipeline is either shut down right now. If not, the oil flows are very, very small right now due to multiple attacks on pumping stations. So Slovakia is heavily being impacted by this right now. Also Hungary, we know both of them are very pro-Russian. So they're not happy with this, and apparently Fico is going to be meeting with Zelensky later this week to discuss on Friday regarding the Druzhba oil pipeline. Now from Bliskovka, Russia has never had, does not have, and will not have the desire to attack anyone, says Putin. The hysteria on this topic in the European Union is a provocation or complete incompetence, the Russian president noted. So Putin kind of calling out NATO and saying, we don't have any desire to attack NATO ever. Do you guys think that Putin is telling the truth here? Do you think that he has plans to attack NATO in the future? Lots of top NATO leaders, top European leaders have been coming out for over a year now, actually, and warning that Russia may attack in the future. Do you think this will be a possibility, or do you think Putin's telling the truth here, that he does not have any desire to attack anyone, considering what we saw happening to Ukraine? Now from Z's Maxim. Having lost the European market due to sanctions, Russia is cementing its political and economic dependence on China ahead of the CPD Kovalenko on the new China-Russian agreement on the construction of Power of Siberia 2 gas pipeline. Gazprom has signed a new binding agreement with China on the construction of the Power of Siberia 2 gas pipeline through Mongolia. For Moscow, this is presented as a strategic breakthrough, but in reality is another step towards complete dependence on Beijing. Today, Russia is already pumping gas to China through the Power of Siberia with a design capacity of 38 billion cubic meters per year. From 2027, another route, the so-called Far East, will add another 10 billion. The numbers sound large, but their meaning is simple. Europe is no longer an orientation. Sanctions have cut off the Kremlin from the main market. China is using this to its full potential, dictating cheap prices, terms, and conditions, forcing Moscow to sign agreements that turn it into a raw material appendage. So this is very big news as well. Russia signed this agreement with China to sell more gas through this Power of Siberia 2 pipeline that's going to go through Mongolia. This is another one that they have also in Russia's eastern side that's already been open, but now apparently this one is going to be in service now, supplying more gas to China. And I heard as well that China was offering Russia like really, really low prices. They weren't willing to pay much for this, and Russia was saying, no, we can't agree to that. But apparently they did agree on a number, and what we've been hearing coming out from this is Russia is basically going to be a slave to China, and China's going to be sucking Russia dry of their resources, especially like gas needs with these pipelines going up. And this is a lot of this is due to Russia losing the market inside of Europe, okay, due to all these sanctions. So Russia's having to turn to China as they have no place else but to sell to them, and they're going to be getting a very low revenue due to these supplies going into China. It's not really going to help them out, and they're going to be being more of a slave to China in the future than they are right now. So crazy news there. Now from NOAA Reports, wonder why Modi and Putin are so close. Russia is now offering India a $3 to $4 discount per barrel on Urals crude versus Brent, up from just $1 in July as U.S. pressure mounts to curb Moscow's energy exports. Here's a report today. Russian oil gets cheaper for India as U.S. amps up trade criticism. So we've been hearing recently that India is really, concerned about purchasing all this Russian oil because they might get hit with more tariffs. Right now, they're facing 50% tariffs from the Trump administration in the U.S. For purchasing Russian oil and also purchasing military equipment, from the Russians. So it looks like the Russians are having to kind of bribe India with lower prices. They're giving them more of a discount than they were just back in July, a $3 to $4 more per barrel discount, just to encourage them to continue purchasing. So you can see here, Russia's getting hit with these tariffs as well. At the same time, it's forcing them to sell their oil cheaper to their partners like India, and in the end, that's hurting their economy. Now from next, Saudi Arabia and Iraq have stopped supplying oil to India's Nayara energy refinery, which is controlled by Rosneft. The reason is EU sanctions introduced in July. The plant usually received about 3 million barrels per month from Saudi Arabia and Iraq, but deliveries dropped to zero in August. The company processes around 8% of India's oil and has already cut output at its Vadanar refinery to 70 to 80% due to sales problems. To export fuel, it now has to rely on the shadow fleet, as major shipping companies have refused to cooperate. So India getting hit hard by these sanctions introduced by the EU back in July. So, we can see again continuously why Russia's having to decrease the price of their oil that they send to India to encourage them to continue purchasing. And this is going to really force India into a position to realize, hey, do we just stop purchasing Russian oil and just shift our supplies over to the Middle East and buy from the U.S. or whatnot? We're going to have to see what they decide to do, but they're under a lot of heavy pressure right now. You can see Saudi Arabia and Iraq have cut off their oil supplies over to India. That's going to hurt their economy pretty largely as we move forward. Now for Maria Avdiva, at this very moment, Russia is massively attacking Kyiv with drones in broad daylight, disrupting schools and daily life. Looks like a new strategy: drain air defense and apply psychological pressure and prepare massive night strikes. Here's a new video coming out today from Kyiv. Look at this drone just flying over their capital in broad daylight while people are out walking around. We usually don't see drones attacking inside of Ukraine during the day. A lot of these attacks take place at night. But as we can see, there was a drone clearly flying over somebody's head today in Kyiv. I think there were somewhere around 50 drones that attacked Ukraine overnight from the Russian side. Now for Max 25, some of the drones in the air over Kyiv are reconnaissance Gerberas with cameras that probably detect the location of air defenses. That is, reconnaissance is underway to prepare new massive strikes, monitoring channels report. So this is not good news. We've been hearing about this actually for more than a month now, that the Ukrainians have been finding some drones that have cameras attached to them, and what they do is they scan the areas inside the cities, locate where air defenses are at so they can launch missile attacks, try to destroy air defense systems, maybe Patriot systems and whatnot. So that's not good news. That means that we're probably going to be seeing more heavy attacks that are going to be underway here very soon. If the Russians are trying to monitor these areas with these cameras, they're preparing massive strikes again on Kyiv very soon. Now, from Ukrainian Review, instead of school and studying, children in Kiev are sitting in the metro because the terrorist country is attacking the capital of Ukraine with drones in the morning. Yeah, so due to these drones just flying over midday or in the morning as well inside of Kiev, we had kids having to hang out in the metro stations due to these attacks to protect themselves. Very sad that these poor children have to be enduring this consistently every single day. I can't imagine how it's going to affect them in the future as they grow older, but at least for right now, they're safe inside of these metro stations where they cannot be harmed in these strikes. Now, NOAA reports a model of the Magura V7 naval drone has been added to the strength exhibit at Ukraine's foreign ministry. This drone, which destroyed a third of Russia's Black Sea fleet and became the first to down an Su-30 fighter from the sea, will now greet foreign visitors at the ministry's entrance. So here's new photos of the Magura V7 naval drone. We've talked about this before. If you guys remember that report, I think it was earlier last year, or late into last year, or early this year, excuse me. The Magura V7 drone. This is a naval drone that has these, I think they're called R-73 air-to-air missiles here that were being used to fire upon a Russian Su-30 fighter bomber and allegedly shot down one or two of those. We've even heard of helicopters being shot down by these as well. So these are finally new photos coming out showing this thing on display inside of Kiev today. So very good news to see, and cool photos coming out. Here's Andriy Sybiha right here also. This is the foreign minister out of Ukraine. So very awesome to see this Magura V7. Now, military news UA, Poland has launched the largest military exercise of the year, Iron Defender 25, involving around 30,000 Polish and allied troops and 600 pieces of equipment. The exercise will run until the end of September and will cover almost the entire territory of the country, with a particular focus on operations near the border with Russia and Belarus and at sea. All right, so Poland carrying out major military exercises right now. And I think we also have some NATO exercises going on in Finland also. And then at the same time, Russia and Belarus are holding major military exercises inside of Belarus right now as well. So this is probably the West responding to these military exercises and also preparing for any possible attack coming from the Russians. There has been a lot of talk about that Russia could be disguising these military exercises inside of Belarus in preparation for an attack onto NATO. I think that's highly likely that could happen, but it looks like NATO is preparing for that in some ways, just in case war happens to break out. Here's another report now from Vicegrad 24. Dutch F-35 fighter jets arrive in Poland for NATO mission. Dutch F-35s have landed in Poland for a 3-month NATO operation to secure airspace on the eastern flank. The jets will operate from Polish base alongside Norwegian F-35s, conducting round-the-clock patrols under NATO command. Okay, so very big news, guys. We've got Dutch F-35 fighter jets arriving in Poland. Then on top of that, Norwegian F-35s that are going to be conducting patrols on the eastern side of Poland, most likely to protect the shipping lanes that supply weapons into Ukraine. We know that on the eastern side, there's a major town of Rzeszów in Poland that is a major rail hub supply for Ukraine. That's where a lot of these NATO weapons come from. And I must note as well, these F-35s are nuclear capable as well. They can carry tactical nuclear weapons, so that's another major sign over to Russia. And again, a more show of force from NATO amid all these exercises going on inside of Belarus right now. So these are new pictures coming out showing these F-35s showing up inside of Poland. Now, military news UA, satellite images published by Dnipro Ozit confirm the destruction of the pumping stations at the Uneka Druzhba oil pipeline hub. Most of the pumping units were out of order. So take a look at this new photo here. Look at all these black spots. These are all the fires that broke out. This is the area that Ukraine was mostly attacking. These are all the pumping stations here located at the Uneka oil pumping station connected to the Druzhba oil pipeline. This is when earlier in the video I talked to you guys about the Slovakian Prime Minister, Robert Fico. He's going to be complaining to Zelensky later this week regarding these strikes on these pumping stations that is stopping the flows of oil through the Druzhba oil pipeline that are critical oil supplies for Hungary and Slovakia. So you can see major damage here to all these pumping stations. Look at these buildings here completely destroyed. Looks like 3-4 buildings or so here completely knocked out. And from what we understand, this pumping station is shut down right now. Now, NOAA reports condemnations. At an extraordinary Ukraine-NATO Council meeting convened in response to recent Russian mass attacks, Ukraine urged allies to boost air defense support. particularly Patriot systems and long-range missiles, and to expand cooperation on drone production. Ukrainian officials outlined the scale of damage and casualties caused by the strikes. NATO members strongly condemned Russia's actions. So we heard just about 3 days ago, that Ukraine was going to be convening an emergency meeting with the UN Security Council and see what they plan to do about it. All we're really hearing today is they have sent out a letter of condemnation to Russia, stating that they condemn the attacks inside of Ukraine. That's all we're really seeing from the UN, and I think many of us would probably expect that. And I do understand this is not in English. I do apologize for that, but this was the report coming out today indicating that that's all we're really hearing from the UN Security Council. They are condemning Russia's actions. Now, Ukrainian Review, Trump told Putin that Russia may have to continue to fight and suffer because both sides suffer. Before they can be separated, Putin took this as a green light to continue attacks on Ukraine, according to the Times. So the Times, a mainstream news outlet, reporting today that apparently Trump told Putin that they might have to continue to fight and suffer for a little bit. We have heard this from Trump before. He's come out and said things like, we have to look at it as if like, Ukraine and Russia are like little kids where they got to fight it out for a little bit. He said things like that in the past. Allegedly, he told Putin that, and Putin took that as a green light to continue attacks onto Ukraine. That's why we're seeing this war continuing, and we're also seeing Vladimir Putin not being willing in any way to work things out with Vladimir Zelensky and set up a meeting so they can try to end this war. So, in my opinion, I think this war is going to continue on probably for several more months, maybe for another year, who knows, but let's hope that it comes to an end safely and fairly for Ukraine, and we'll have to see what happens there. Now, Anton Gerashenko, Russian media, reports a large oil stain moving towards Crimea. Reportedly, this is due to an oil leak from a tanker in a Russian Novorossiysk port on August 29th. There are reports that the stain consists of no less than 10 tons of oil products. In the winter, there already were mazout spills in the Black Sea due to a crash of Russian tankers. Russia is a threat to the environment. So we got reports of a massive oil leak over here near Novorossiysk port. That's going to be down in the Krasnodar Krai region, right on the Black Sea coast. And apparently there's a major leak going on over here. This is numerous times we've had reports of oil leaks from Russian oil tankers that were sinking off the coast of Crimea. There's been massive oil spills along beaches over here in this area, especially like Sochi's been affected by this. Now it looks like there's another major oil spill coming from this Novorossiysk port, and we continue to hear that Russia is a threat to the environment, and they definitely are with all these reports that we continuously keep seeing. All right, now from next up, almost a third of Russian companies reported losses in the first half of 2025. This is the highest level since the pandemic. Businesses are going into the red due to expensive loans, weak demand, higher taxes, sanctions, and rising costs, including increased wages. So once again, another report of major economic problems inside of Russia. As we hear today that almost a third of Russian companies reported losses in the first half of 2025. That is crazy. We continue to hear major problems inside of Russia. And can you imagine a third companies inside of an entire nation suffering major economic losses? I mean, on top of the reports we just had a few days ago that Russian oil companies are suffering 50 to 70% profit losses compared to a year ago. That's due to Ukraine destroying all the oil infrastructure inside of Russia, now knocking out the Druzhba oil pipeline. Sanctions as well are really hurting the Russian economy, all these shadow fleet vessels being sanctioned. So Russia is continuing to suffer, and on the back end, they are still continuing this war inside of Ukraine. Absolutely insane. They are going to destroy their economy over the next year or so. It's going to get worse and worse. And what happens at some point if Russia runs out of money to fight this war? What do you guys think will happen next? So crazy update there. Now for next, everyone expected news on Ukraine, but Trump will make a statement about the Pentagon. Today's announcement from Trump, which many anticipated in the context of Ukraine and his expired ultimatum to Putin, will actually be about something else. The White House confirmed it will focus on the Pentagon. Recently, Trump's administration has been actively pushing the idea of renaming the Department of Defense into the Department of War. Corresponding amendment has already been introduced in Congress. So here's a report today from Jackie Heinrich. And it says, new from Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt on today's 2 p.m. event, the president will be making an exciting announcement related to the Department of Defense. So yeah, we haven't seen really Trump around in the media at all for like the last week, and there was lots of concern still that maybe he passed away. He's barely being seen anywhere in the White House right now, so I'm sure he is having some health issues. Maybe he's trying to take a break and relax a little bit. Maybe his doctor is telling him to kind of chill out for a minute, but apparently, he's going to be holding some sort of meeting today with the press. He's going to be talking about the Department of Defense. Maybe he might discuss some other things as well, but just wanted to let you guys know he should be speaking to the press today. Now, from next, the U.S. has sold NATO countries lethal and defensive weapons for Ukraine worth $2 billion. NATO countries under the Prioritize Ukraine Requirements List initiative purchased lethal and defensive weapons for Ukraine from the U.S. worth $2 billion within just a few weeks. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte said. Trump earlier stated that the U.S. and EU had agreed to send American weapons to Kyiv with the cost to be covered by Europe. The deliveries will include Patriot batteries, not just missiles. So that's good news. Ukraine's going to be getting more Patriot systems and missiles here under this $2 billion that has been allocated from European nations supporting this initiative where basically the U.S. is supplying weapons to Ukraine, but in the form of payments. So if a European nation has money, they want to fork up, let's say, $500 million. They can help out Ukraine and purchase weapons from the U.S. and send them over to Ukraine. So apparently $2 billion so far ever since this initiative has been created. That's how much money we have had generated for Ukraine so far, according to Mark Rutte, the NATO Secretary General. So very good news today on that. Now from Tomi. First permanent NATO base in Finland is reality. NATO's new multi-corps Land Component Command, or MCLCC, became operational at Mikkeli in conjunction with the Army Command on 1st of September 2025. So this is huge news as well. We've got a NATO command center right on the border with Russia. And just think about this, Russia invaded Ukraine because they claimed that Ukraine was going to join NATO. Yet at the same time, Finland and Sweden ended up joining NATO. And now we've got a NATO command headquarters here. It looks like it's called Northern European Ground Forces Headquarters, right on the border of Russia here inside of Finland. This most likely means that missiles and tanks and all kinds of military equipment is probably going to be deployed into Finland as well. So this is a very big report that just came out today talking about this with this new NATO base that has been created inside of Finland in the town of Mikkeli. So big news there. Now for Bliskovka, during the day, air defense forces neutralized 48 out of 53 enemy UAVs. Most of the drones were moving in the direction of Kyiv. The enemy attack continues with new groups of Russian drones being spotted in the airspace of Cherniv and Sumy regions. So only 53 drones going into Ukraine overnight, and we usually see this generally from like Tuesday to Thursday on average. We only see about maybe 40 or 50 drones per night, and then once we get closer to the weekend, Thursday, Friday-ish, or Saturday, that's usually when we see the Russians launching a massive attack. So that'll probably be coming here again very soon, and I think the next big attack is going to be on Kyiv because we haven't seen a major attack on Kyiv in like over the last week or two. So that'll probably be coming next. So there's your update on the amount of drones going into Ukraine. All right, now our final updates here from the Kyiv Independent. These are the indicative estimates of Russia's combat losses as of September 2nd, according to the Armed Forces of Ukraine. In our final update, Russia's losses as of September 2nd, 800 troops, 4 AFVs, 89 vehicles and fuel tanks, 1 tank, 53 artillery systems, 170 UAVs, and 1 MLRS. And it looks like that is it, guys. So pretty low numbers here across the board today. 1 MLRS being destroyed. That's a multiple launch rocket system. Very good news to see one of those being knocked out. Aside from that, artillery systems up a little bit. We usually see about 20 to 30, up to 53 today. Tanks and AFVs, very low numbers. Same with vehicles and fuel tanks. And troop numbers probably about average. We've been seeing more closer to 800 to 900 on average for well over a month now. So guys, I want to thank you so much for being here for today's update. Again, on September 2nd, 2025. And I hope you guys all have a wonderful day out there. Take care and be safe. Let me know what you think about all these details down below in the comment section. But that's going to be it for today's update. If you got something out of this, please smash that like button. Also, if you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing down below. Hit the notification bell. That way YouTube can notify you. And with that, hope you all have a great day. Everybody take care and God bless. And we'll see you in the next one.